excuse me, you should be able to hear my voice, and you should be able to also see my screen at this time actually. And if you have problems with any of that via the GoToWebinar, you can dial the number in the chat actually. That number in the chat is 877-582-7011. Okay. So today, again, we're going to convert some logos, and I like to put more than one on the screen. And as I mentioned in an earlier session, I do this because there's so many different variations of logos that we do, and if it's problematic for you that I have more than one design, just let me know, and I can just take it back to one. But I so want you to understand the differences between each design that we have actually, because none of them are the same. They're like clouds, you know, and you see clouds in the sky, you live your life, and no cloud is the same, not one. And so I view the designs that we get as kind of the same actually. There'll be similarities, but none of them will be exactly the same way. And so this is what we're having to deal with when we're working with embroidery designs, okay? Even for graphic designs, it's the same way. But because we're stitching on fabric, you know, it makes it, I think, more special for us, because we have to change things from a graphic perspective into a embroidery stitching perspective, because we're working with thread and a needle and not with ink. So these designs that we're going to work on today, and we'll get through as many as we can actually, but what happens when we have a design that we convert and the thing just won't convert correctly? And what steps do we need to take in order to fix that and move on to our next project? Okay. And so right now, again, these designs, these are for left chest. Okay. And so the first thing that we do is we go in and we make sure that the design, the graphic that we see on the screen, is in fact the finished size of the embroidery. Okay. That in itself will reveal any problems that we may have as far as the size, especially the text. The first thing that I look on this design here is this text here. And so we're going to click on this, and this is 8 inches wide, okay, which at 8 inches wide might not be a problem to stitch this out and it stitch out perfectly at this size, okay. But we're going to go in, we're going to make this 4 inches wide. We'll change this to 4.0. And with this option here, the object size, you can set the width and the height of the object here. And we have to make sure also that our scale here is locked, so that, oops, didn't do it fast enough. So we're gonna go back again with this locked, and we're gonna make this 4, so it goes in and it changes both the height and the width in proportion. So that's what we wanna do for the design here. Same for this one here actually. This 5 point, wanna make this, let's make this 3.75 inches wide, okay, and change the size of that. So you see, even visually, you know, when we look at these designs as they are currently, we'll make this 3.0. And so based on the original size that we saw on screen compared to what we see now, I mean, we can tell there's a humongous difference between the sizes of these designs that we see here on the screen. And it's great to be able to go in and see this as the actual finished size of the embroidery, because we want to make sure that this thing is going to work. Now, if I go in, if I click on my little rectangle tool here, draw this out like this, and I want to look at this at the height for this. oops, 4. So this is, I made this 4.5 millimeters tall for this. And you know where I'm going next with this. I want to make sure as I scroll down here, you know where I'm going to put this. I'm going to put this because I need to find out before I start doing any stitching and before I start doing any converting, is that text large enough in order for me to convert this text actually. So as you can see here, this is where I just double check my height here for this. And as I zoom in, you can see that the text here is slightly shorter than what it should be. Okay, and so I have to go in now, and as I select this, you can see that it select everything. So I need to separate the objects on the screen. And the way that I'm going to do that, I'm going to go up top here. Here, it lets me go in and separate all the objects. Okay, so if I click this one, now I should be able to click on each character like this. And all I'm going to do for this is when I look at this, we have the option to draw guides. If I left click here on the ruler and pull this down like this, it's going to give me a guide different from what we use inside the embroidery side. So this is where I can go in and pull this down and line this up. So I can actually see here from this already that the letters here, they need to be enlarged. And what we can do for something like this is sometimes when we see text like this, guys, the text itself basically, so the way that the artist arranged this is that they have these two lines here and they're pretty much the same height as the actual word that you see here. What do I do? What do I need to do in a situation like that? Well, you can always go in and you can always make adjustments as you're working inside the software. For instance, like right now, I need to make these bigger so I can go in. I can decide that when I select those like this, I can increase the size of those by, let's see what 10% looks like. As I go here and I'll type in 10, press enter, see what happened. So it went in and it increased the size of the letters here. Okay, so now I'm pretty sure that they are the correct height here for embroidery. I'll use my arrow key at 12 o'clock. Okay, so that's what we got here. So now, as I'm looking at this here, so right now, I'm going to click on here. I'm going to click on my ruler here and drag this down like this. So now the full height of that is going to be, it's going to look like this. Okay, so, and remember, this is a preparation for the embroidered side. And so what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to draw a box here around the word here. And I'm going to click this center here, and I'm going to click this, and I'm going to drag this up slowly. Just like that. Okay. Now, that was not so the distance was not so large as the customer could actually see that. But here, from this distance here, you can see that if this is the first time that you're looking at this, I'll press delete here, you can't tell what I did to it. Okay. So I want you, when you're working with designs, you got to think like this, okay, in order to get those small letters. And because the small letters are controlling pretty much everything as far as how small I can make this, okay, as to how large I can make this. So right now with this, now that my text here is the appropriate height size. So now I know that with the conversion here, and with the conversion, the small text doesn't always work out as well through the conversion process than the larger letters like you see here. Okay, so decide, how you want that to stitch out. How do you want that to look? And so, and then you just go from there. Like right now with this, I'll just go in. I'm ready to convert this over. Everything's already vectorized. Okay. I'm just going to draw a box around this to select this. And the next step is just to go in to my conversion and just click convert. As this goes in, guys, and as it converts this design here, take a look and see what it did. Not as bad as I thought it would look. Okay. Looks just like this. So the way that this looks now, I mean, the small text did a pretty decent job actually. And with this new E4.5, the automatic conversion for the text actually for satin stitches has improved enormously since the inception of it. And so right now, we may be able to work with this. Okay, we'll further inspect this because again, like always, at this point, we've just done the conversion, and we've taken the graphics here to the embroidery side and it's stitched out. And the next step here is to prepare this design for production. Okay, and when we're dealing with lettering, as I've told you 1,000 times, that lettering is very time consuming. So if you can get it to work, that's awesome if you can get it to work. Okay, so right now, let's go to File. We want to save as, and we're going to save this as, let's see here, converting lettering. But so I click here, I'll backspace this. To 02/03/2021. Okay, and so that is, I'm going to make sure here also that we're at E4.0 like this, and I'm going to save. All right, so now once we've got this design in, and if we select all of it, oops, let me undo this, click off of this, and the size for this is I navigate up top, and this allows you to change measurements within the software without changing the operating system settings here. For 4.4, 4 inches wide here like this, like you see, this is fine. And the 1.357 inches tall. So we're good as far as the height for this now. I'm also going to go over, I'm going to scroll all the way up here, and I want to click all of the vector artwork, and I'm just going to lock it on the screen. Okay, and I'm also going to hide it here as I right click. I'm going to hide it, so we just see this on the screen. So now we have our design on the screen. We have some letters that need some work done to them here. As I zoom in, as you can see the N here. Now, I want to reduce this size to the finished size of the embroidery. And as you know, upper left corner, the #1 key, click off of it here. That's the one-to-one view of the finished size of the embroidery. Okay, and so we can see the small lettering here. It's this small. We can actually see what types of problems we have with this as far as it being so tiny. Okay. And so right now, at this point, we'll go in and we'll adjust this text for this job for production. We decide what do we want to go in and stitch first here. This is going to be, it's the left chest design. And so right now, there may be a possibility of this also being used as a cap design in this particular regard. And as I talked to you about that before, whenever that comes about, that means that we need to go in and digitize this, unless we're going to do two separate files for the left chest and the cap. Okay. And we'll have to go in and digitize this for a cap if this is going to stitch on a cap. Okay. And this is just because the customer mentioned that, you know, we may stitch these on caps later on. So just that hearing that basically is enough for me to determine, well, I need to go in and do this for like a cap design. If they're going to just do one design, or if it's two design, if they're going to pay for two designs, you know, and sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes doing the one design can create problems too, based on what you're going to stitch it on. Okay. And sometimes it's best just to do two separate designs because for one, it's going to stitch beautifully, but on that other fabric is just going to be it's going to be a problem actually. So sometimes it's best to do that, just to do two separate designs. And to do two separate designs, it's kind of like if you're stitching something and a customer comes in and says, I want you to stitch that on the left chest here over here, and I also want you to stitch this on the other side. And so as you charge by placements, the digitizer charges also by separate designs. It may be, if it's a totally new design, it's charge you twice for it. Okay, and it's just the time being spent on preparing the design for your production actually. So right now, let's do the stitch player. So we'll navigate up top here and let's run this. Just want to see what it does. So it goes in, does all the green first. And looking at this, we already noticed something that's not right, and we know what that is, right? As we're looking at these stitch out, again, that thing that's not correct in this, we should be able to see this already. Two things now. Three things. Four things, possibly. Five things. Six things. Seven things. Just going through, just observing to see how the way this stitches out. All right, and we have the P here. So, you know, by doing this, you know, we get an opportunity to see what needs to be done in order to finish this for production. That's what this is for when you're dealing with the stitch player. Okay, and so one of the first things that I noticed was there are no underlay stitches. Okay, and I know that you saw that too. And the second is that the stitching sequence, if we're going to do this for a cap design, the sequence needs to be changed. Okay, so in the stitching order needs to be adjusted as well. So having said that, you know, we go in and we knock these out one by one. And so with this, as we go in, it's stitching for, if it's going to stitch for a cap, one, we need to stitch this from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Okay, and with this text on the screen here, we'll go in and let's set up the lettering first, and let's correct the text first, and then we'll go in and then we'll resequence how it stitches out. What about that? One thing also to take note of here, this column, okay, because it's going to stitch on a cap, I'm going to navigate over here to pull comp, and maybe for the pull comp for this, I'll change it to 0.20. Now, if you don't understand what the pull comp does, basically, the pull comp, it compensates for the pulling and stretching of the fabric when it's on the machine stitching, because the fabric stretches, and we compensate for that by over stitching the columns or the fill areas. And by over stitching, that means that we make up for all that stretchiness that's going on as it's stitching out. Basically, we're making up for that by going in and doing the pull compensation. Column width is totally different. Column width controls the width of the columns. And as we're looking here on the screen, I don't see any need to go in and mess with this. Now, right now on my setting, I have mine set to 0.10. Okay, and that's why these letters look like they do here, and they're kind of close together. But we can see here, if I draw a box around these objects here on screen, and I remove this, if I go backwards like this, so it did go in and take down some of that actually. Okay, and because the objects are thick on the screen, I could live with that. Okay, because they're thick enough. It's not like they're so thin that it's going to cause a problem like this one. Now, if I want to increase this one a little bit, because it's going to go on a cap, I can make that wider like this. Okay, and this is to preserve, the width here, to make it thick enough so you can actually see that, because we don't want this to run on the machine and turn into like what looks like a running stitch. Okay, needs to be much thicker. Okay, got that one down. Now, depending on how we know that this is the center of the cap here, this is where the seam is going to be here. Okay, and we need to take note of that pretty much, because if we go in right now on this edge like this here, I may want to go in and do some extra stitches here. It's a very small area here though. Okay, and so it's better, it's always nicer if it's a Tommy stitch fill, where we can put in a wide zigzag underlay with it basically, but this, we'll just kind of play this and see where we get with that one actually. We look at the letters here. Now, what's strange with the letter U? Does this look strange to you, the way that this is with the letter U? Or does that look okay for your eyes when you're looking at the letter U here actually? And what I'm thinking is this: I'm thinking that if this is going to stitch from side to side like this and go down here on the bottom and come up this way like this, I'm thinking that, hey, maybe, see, I'm going to right click this and do a quick clone over here. What if, now notice what I did here. I want to change the stitch angle here to horizontal, but when I went to my stitch angle tool, stitch angle tools allows you to add stitch angles to selected objects. It only had the vertical. Okay, and whenever you see this, because this is not the stitch angle that I want to use for this, then you'll just go in and you will right click on it. And remember, through your drop menu, you have a convert option here. I want to convert this to a complex fill. I can do this here to where it actually goes in now and stitches itself horizontally. And I can go in and now I can click on my stitch angle tool here and I can make this stitch across from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock like this, and press enter like that. Okay, and so now this, and this one I'll make this a separate color like this. So for something like this, I mean, but it depends on who's doing it, okay? Because right now for this, when I go to my reshape tool here, when I select this, you know, the reshape tool allows us to go in and edit our node points and our outlines. And right now, what's bothering me is the fact that this is on a single point here on the bottom. Okay, so as you go in and you're working with this, yes, Vimla, you're correct actually. And I was, you took the words right out of my mouth. Here, I want this last stitch here to look like the bottom here of this one. Now, so what I can do for this, I can click this and turn it like this. But I want this to be straight across like this. So I can press my control key down and add another stitch angle like this and make this straight across like this and have this angle down like that. Okay. And so you see, this is just, it all depends on how you look at it. And so, and you want to make that look the same like this, because this looks more, it just looks nicer that way, and it looks more uniform. And so every little thing matters. Yes. And now it looks like you're correct, Gail. Now this actually belongs to these areas here now. Okay. And so, and that's important. Now, could I have left it like it was? Sure, I could have left it like it was, but I'm trying to get the maximum quality look with this actually, and I want it to look nice. Okay, I want it to look professional, and I want it to look clean. Okay, and those are very crucial things. If let's say, for instance, with the U, yes, continuity, it is very, very important, Gail, because it just defines the entire design that you're working with, and you just want to be sure that the customer is getting the best quality, because so many digitizers, they don't, it's sad, I don't like to say anything negative about anybody, but you know, everything you do based on the quality. And with this also, if I needed to, like this space here, because as you know, sometimes, let's say for instance, this was, it looked like this right here. What about that? Okay, this can be a problem. Why? Because watch what happens here when I press my number 1 key. Okay, this is the one-to-one view of the image that we're going to actually stitch on the garment. So this looks like it's going to just disappear, right? And so, and this would be fine on a gym bag, nylon, something, or leather, but on PK knit shirt, you know, it's not good enough actually. This is not thick enough actually, because we want to be able to see, if I undo, you can see the difference in just adding a little bit more. If I click here and I go to my reshape tool, and the way that I would do it is I would go in, for this, I've only got 2 node points here on the bottom. And if I needed to move that down to make that taller, I would just use my arrow key at 6 o'clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There. So right now, now what I've got, when I go to and press my number 1 key on my keypad now, I've got more space here that's stitching, that's going to help me out once this finishes stitching out basically. So this is the main reason why, you know, I went in and added a little bit more to that one. And I'm going to press S. Okay. I'll go, this is just for me because I'm just very, very the perfectionist. You don't have to be that way here. I'm going to click on my I'll use the run stitch, and I'll do this. It seems something small and minute, but I want to make sure that this thing is just want to make sure that it is 1, 2, 3, just like that. I just want to make sure that it's straight. I'll press my shift key here, and I'll press my delete key here to get rid of that, and I'll navigate up top here, and I'll click save. I just want to make sure that it's straight. Okay, so so right now I'll go back in. I'll click on my stitches. So now with these, we have the first we go and we set it up the way that we want to set it up here. And let's say I don't want to use a connection stitch between the P and the J. So I'll select both of these. These are not Wilcom fonts, as we could declare here inside the color object list. And so we'll go to connectors, and we don't need to use inside object because this is what we use for Wilcom fonts. This time we'll use after object. We want to find out, and we want to decrease the number here. We'll make it 1 and press enter. Get rid of it. Okay. So now, because the red is stitching first, I can go in and do it this way. This is the center of the cap here. So I will click on I want the E to stitch first. I'm pressing my control key down, then the R, then the U, and this one. And then it's going to go to the P, and then to the J. So I just selected the order in which I want those to stitch out. And now in my color object list, watch what happens when I go down to my sequence tool and I choose sequence by selects. And this resequence objects in the order of the selection that I made. So watch when I left click this, it restructures it. Okay. And now it's stitching in the order that I want them to stitch. And also I've got some thin columns and I have some thicker columns. And for these, because they're much thicker, when I go in for my fills, I'm going to use auto spacing, and I'm going to use 80% because that's what I normally use for my stitch density. Okay. When I go to my underlay stitches here, those are thick enough that I can use an edge run underlay stitch with those. And I can use a center. Oops. Now, because these, see here. Now, as I selected those, I'm looking here in the color object list, and I'm looking at how the object types are displayed on my screen here. And as we talked about many a time before, this is the branching tool. This is the starting point. This is the exit point for these objects here, actually. And so for these, when I select these here, when I go in, if I select more of them, it's not going to give me the range of underlays here that I want. But I wanted to use an edge run for these, and then I wanted to use a center run for the bottom. It did not give me that option when I selected everything. So sometimes when you go in, you have to do this because of the conversion here and the branching. Same thing for this one. Okay, because it's branched, and because it came out okay, I don't want to touch it. Okay, but I will click my arrow key at 9 o'clock to slide that R over like this. Okay, we have the U, edge run here, So as we continue with this, I'm going to click save. Okay. We can zoom in and we can turn off the true view and we can see the underlay stitches here that we have that we posted here. Okay. Next on the list here is the P and the J. So for these items here, you can see inside the color object list here, they're single objects. You can see here, they're not branched like you see here. And so these are going to be easier here to go in and do those at once. And I'm going to click save here. Okay. So now that red portion of this is completed. Okay. And next on the list here is we can go in and we can start doing the this area here is so small. If I press the number 1 key here, it's that small. So it's not going to make much of a difference if I add extra underlays here for the seam. It's not going to make much of a difference here because of the size of it once it's finished. Okay. All right. So now, at this point here, we want to go back and we want to start here for the green. And here, as we start here with a U. Okay. And this is what it looks like when I take off my true view. Okay. Remember, when you have curves in the system, it has to make long stitches and short stitches in order to create that curve like this. And that's also going to be based on your stitch angles. So when I navigate here, here's my reshape tool here. It shows me the stitch angles that were used. And I'm going to zoom into this. So here you're going to have the long stitches and the short stitches. But you see here you have 2 short stitches, and this is because of the stitch angle. Okay. Here, if I change the angle like this just slightly, you see how it changes it? This is before and after, just by slightly changing that stitch angle. Okay, now it looks fine. And it's also going to, make it looks fine here also. Now with this, as I'm looking at this, now one thing that I do too for smaller letters, I will go in and I will take out the short stitches here on the inside in the fractional spacing, because this is what it looks like now. If I were to select the U and up top here, go in and take off the fractional spacing and the shortening stitches, you see how that looks? It looks much nicer, eh? So with this, I can use this because, again, if I press my number 1 key, and guys, I'm constantly pressing that number 1 key. I know you probably get tired of seeing me do it, but I'm constantly checking this to see what it looks like at 1-to-1. And it's just a habit. And so it's going to give a much nicer look to it. Now, if these letters were any larger here, I wouldn't use this, but this is going to add a few more stitches to it also, and it just looks much nicer. And the turn here, if I want these stitches to go straight sooner before it hits the end, you just select it and click on your reshape tool. And I could press my control key down, navigate here, and here's my stitch angle tool, left click. Now watch, you see what this looks like now, how it's at an angle? I'll click this, press control and make this straight. So this is how, again, how you can go in, or just like this, with the stitch angles, okay? And so having done that to the U, so I wanna go in, I can set up the stitch sequence for this by choosing the U. I'm going to press my control key down, the J, a little stick here, and C. Then go back and do the N and the T are joined together. The S, this one, and then these. And I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3 for my sequence. That's going to change the sequence, and I'm going to immediately click Save. Okay. For my J, it's nice to go in and kind of visualize. Let's say that if I had a column that was 1.2 millimeters, let me change my metric to my metric system here. 1.2 millimeters wide. And so if you want to know what the distance or a good distance between, you know, the letters are, or any spaces, I'll move this over like this and like this. So now you see that difference there, you see between these two letters here? Okay. So for the J, as I choose my select tool here, and let me do this also, I'm going to right click here on the column C stitch. I'm going to break it apart. So that I can see both lines. So here, I'm going to use my arrow key at 9 o'clock. So to make sure that the spaces are adequate between my letters here like this, I can do something like this. Okay. And that's just to kind of verify and just make sure that the spaces between the letters are decent and they're not too close together. Okay. And this is just another way that you can go in and you could go in and justify this here. Like with this one. I'll right click the N, zoom in, and use the arrow key at 3 o'clock. Well, I mean, why not? Okay. The N and the T are branched together like this. I don't like the N anyway. Okay, so I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to break this apart and separate those two. And here I can go in and then just as a method of making sure that everything is spaced out apart. Okay, and because this has a kind of a it's a crossbar on top here like this, we can move this inside it a little bit, just like that. Now for that N, what are we going to do with that N? This is a nice, I'm going to press S here. This is a nice, it looks nice because it's kind of it's on the same angle here. And for some instances, you could probably use that. See, I'm going to measure here. I'm going to go to View and choose Measure. Now that's really wide. Okay, so here's where you can go in and you can play with your, I'll go in and I play with my vector tools, or I can use the running stitch and just delete it. Like right now, this is going to cross like this. I'm going to press Enter. That's what that looks like there. This here is going to cross like that. Okay, and that tells me that I can go in and do something different with this N. And one thing that I could do is this. I'll digitize using column B stitch. And I'll go right on the side like this. Left click, I'm going to press Enter now. And I'm going to do side 2. So here, as I make this straight across like this, taking back that last thread. And so here I can left click here and I can stop here. okay, like that. And then as I'm using column B stitch here again, I can start here at the top, slide this down like this, click here and press enter, and just go straight across like this. Here and there. Looks like this. So that's what I'm working with here. And last but not least, here I can start here from the bottom like this. Take this straight up like this and press enter, and then go to the side here. And the reason behind this is I want to have a flat. I want that to be flat. Okay. And to me, that looks better than the other one. Okay. Now, and sometimes too, guys, think about this as well. Look at this right here. I'm not sure what's going on with that. So I'll click on this first one and I'll go to reshape tool. And here's my starting and exit point here for that one. Now, when I press tab, I want the starting point for this one to be on top of the last point here. So I'll go in and I'll move this here and press tab when that stops here. I want the starting point for this one to be directly on top of this one. So I'll move this right here. Okay. And our little stitch is still there. That little. Now, and if it does something like this, I will look at the underlay stitches, which there are none. But if I go in, add a center on, it's still there. So when this happens, try this. I want to go in and I want to run this through my stitch processor. So I'm going to select everything like this. I'll navigate up top here to stitch drop menu. And here we have our process stitches. And what this does, this helps us process the stitches in the design. As I left click, here we have a lot of functions here. Don't have time to go into all those today, but I'm just going to click OK just to run the stitch filter through that. Still there. We will. Oh, you know what that is? That's the running stitch that I put in there. See, guys, see that's the reason why when I normally do this, I'll use a vector instead of a regular stitch because to avoid situations like that. Okay, so now that one's done. Okay, so here as we continue with this, I'm gonna press S here and I'm gonna move this over. Again with this one, when I go in and I have the O, I'll use my arrow. And with these sections here, you can leave these slightly because it's curved on the inside. You can leave that in there. Same thing between the O and the S here like this. It won't be the whole distance between these like everything else was. It'll just be something like this right here. There'll be floating slightly to the inside like this, like that. That should be cool. And the reason why this is cool is because these are curved objects here. This is a straight object. So if you have two straight objects, they'll have to go the total distance across. But if they're curved, you can do this with it because they're not on a straight line. Here, I'll click save like this. All right. So number S. Let's see what's going on with the S here. The great thing. Let's see here. Oh, Vimla has a question. Vimla wants to know how I made this column on the end, Vimla. Yeah, so Vimley, are you, let's see here, at the J. Okay. Um, with the J, um, let's see, let's take a look at the J here. On the J, now the way that this looks on the J, like this. Now, when you're going in and you're working with um, items like this, and to me, this is okay here for the J, and it's okay for the size that I'm working on it with it here on the screen like this. Now, can we do something else to the J? Sure. We can select the J, and we can I can go to my reshape tool. See, this is what I don't like about it, the angle. So I could select these last two node points like this, and I'm gonna nudge these by using my arrow key here at 9 o'clock. And you can do that, guys. You can go in and you can add things like this, and you're doing it to improve the shape of the J actually. Don't be afraid to do things like this, even a little bit more like this. So now what can I do? Now I can go in and I can click on my stitch angle tool. Okay, or if I'm not liking this, I'll press escape. I'll right click on that J, and I'll just go down to convert, and I'll choose convert to turning complex fill. Or it's better to do this actually, because if I do this, the stitch angle is still there. Okay, so it's best that I go in and click on this, convert this to a regular complex fill. Okay, and just first use one stitch angle. Now I can go in. Now I can choose my stitch angle tool, and I can start from scratch, just like this. I'm controlling the embroidery machine, how it stitches for smooth shapes like this. And for this corner here, that'll be now a corner, and I can exit here and press enter like that. Again, I'll select this. If I have an issue with these, I'll uncheck the shortening of the stitches like that. And that's how I'll solve that problem right there actually. That's how I'll solve it. Okay. And Susanna has a question. Yeah, it does look a lot better. Looks more sustained. And Susanna says, show me how you made that column. Susanna, is that the column on the end? This column here? Oh, the red columns. So this is, and let me share also like the reason why, like the reason why I'm doing this. The reason why I'm doing this is because, again, I'm gonna press the number 1 key again, click off of this and press number 1. This is the finished size of the embroidery. Okay, I wanna be able to see the fabric in between these letters, okay, before they were kind of closing up. You're gonna see that on the stitch out. So in order for me to prevent that from happening, I'll go in and I'll just choose, sometimes I'll just choose the rectangle tool here inside the software and just draw a rectangle. And I could also, what I do here is I'll change these to a vector by clicking on my vector tool, outline. Here's a vector. I don't need the outline. So I'll use this. So this is what I normally do for this. So right now with this, now I've got to change this, the width of this to 1.2 millimeters. and that's 1.2 millimeters wide there actually. So with this now, again, I got the same action here. I'll press S to hide the stitches. I'll click this so that I can see my hollow node points, and I can move this to this angle like that. And so with these, when I go in, it's safer for me now to go in, and I can space those apart just like this in order to prevent any issues. Okay. And with this is enough space here. Okay. And so, and I use these, and normally I'll use the vector so that I can get rid of them, because it's because you got to remember that you have stitched objects on the screen if you use the stitching. Okay. And what you need to see these two outlines. You need to see the outline so that you can separate them. What happened with the column A stitch or the column C stitch before, when you do this one, you only see the center. You can only see the stitching when you go in and you turn them on like this. And in order for me to see the outlines for those, so they look like this, is I got to right click on this and choose break apart. But you got to remember that this is stitched out on the screen, and you got to remember to delete them. With this one, I don't have to worry about it here because it's just a vector. It's not stitches, and that's why I prefer to use the vector tool to go in and to do that. And for your spacing and everything like that, here you have the P and the E here. Running stitch, I don't need that. And so after the S stitches, then the E and the L stitches here like that. Now, these are much smaller letters, okay? And so for that, for the E like this, I can grab the L and nudge this over like this. Again, these letters they're smaller. So when I press S and I press the #1 key, really tiny letters, okay? And so I'll have to go in and apply that same theory here. I'm gonna have to break these apart. I'll nudge this. Right there. And then you have the O stops here, and this R, and these are just basic functionality here. So press S, and I'll select these. I'll take off the fractional spacing, and I'll also remove the shortening of the stitches here like this. And my fills for my auto spacing is going to be at 80% like this. I'm going to press enter. Looks much better. Our S here, we'll take a look at it inside the color object list. It's one object, it's not branched. That's good for us because now I can go to my edit tool like this, and I can run my automatic knife tool. And remember, once you do this, you go directly here to your stitch angle tool. See that stitch angle here like this? Okay. And so with this stitch angle here, I can go in and I could move this stitch angle to right here like this. Now I can go to my stitch angle tool. That's the only angle in here, so that means that I can actually go in and add stitch angles based on the hands of the clock at 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock like this. I'm adding my own stitch angles here. And once I complete that, I'll press enter. That's what it looks like. And these are things that you can just practice with them. Okay. Here they've got all node points here, and they're like outline points. I'm going to click this one, and I'm going to press my shift key down, and I'll go all the way here, and I'm going to press my space bar to make those curve points like this. Okay, and that's what the curve points look like. Here I'm going to press shift again to here, and I'm press my space bar. It just makes it look nicer. I think we got the same thing going on here for the O. Left click, press shift down, and click this one. If that doesn't work, go left click, press shift, and click this one. So these objects here, as I look at these, they're single objects. So now if I can't do all of them for some strange reason, I do a portion of them, press my space bar, and then do the next portion. I'll click here. I'm going to right click on this one this time and press my space bar. Here, this angle here, I want this to be flush. I want that one to be flush here like this. And I want this one flush. That means if I have to drag this one back, there's no point back like this, because I want that flush. Okay. I'm going to click save here. And for the rest of these, and again, I'm going to press my tab key to advance it. Here's this one, stitch the next, this one, and then it should stitch after this one stitches, it should stitch the end. 1, 2, 3. 4. I'm going to press 1, 2, 3. I'm going to grab this one, and I'll select that one, and I'll change that to color number 16 like this. As I click save, okay, I'm at S here, color number 16, and as I select these letters here, making sure that I got those turned off. As I click save, so now as I select these, I'll go to my underlay tab here and make sure that these are by segment, center run stitch. That's all I need for those. And for these, same thing. You go in and you choose center run for those. I'll leave that one alone. Center run for those, and center run for this guy. Okay, I'm going to click save here. Now, these objects here for these vectors here, don't need those anymore. I'll delete those. And so now I'll go to my design, remove my small stitches here, and as I'll use 6/10 of a millimeter. The stitch count here currently is 4,617 stitches. And when I run this, let's see how much, just took out 4 stitches, which is good because, oops, gotta get rid of these two. I'm gonna click save. So now there's 4,000 195 stitches in this. Just select this here. I want to place this in the center of the page and the center of the design. So I'll select that. I'll navigate here to position X and Y, and I'll type 0. I'm going to press Tab to go down to position Y. I'll press 0 here again and press Enter. Now it's centered on the page and on the design here. I'm going to click Save here. Let's run it. Wrong. So I'm going to go here. I want to grab all the green. So I'm going to go by color. I'll choose 16. In my sequence tool, I have that to move to the end. Oh, I'm sorry, to the end. Or, I have some questions here too. Susanna had a question here. Fractional and shortening stitches, is this best to remove them for small lettering? I do. I remove them for small lettering because they're really not necessary for the small lettering. Okay, when you have larger letters, it's going to be more. It's going to make more sense to use those with those actually because the text in the letters they're moved up, and so that's what I use. Susanna has another question. If the letters are slightly narrow than 1.2 millimeters, how do you make them wider? What you'll do is you will go in and you will, like for instance, this letter O here, I would just go to Pull Comp and you click on Adjust Column Width. And that makes them bolder. You can change these. I usually start with 0.05 and go up in 5% increments. But you'll use the column width. To make those wider. Dylan has a question also. Dylan wants to know why I use the automatic knife tool. That automatic knife tool, it is used and it helps to fix letters. Okay, and when I say that, I mean if something is automatically converted and you go over, it was supposed to automatically fix this S. Okay, but for some reason it didn't, and so it's sometimes it automatically fixes things, but sometimes it doesn't work because of the shape or if the object is branched. But it's like an automatic tool that you can use to go in and fix things. Like I click on the P here, it's not available. It won't be available if the object is branched. But if it's a single item, then it becomes available when you click on your edit tool. Right now it's not available. Okay, but the manual knife tool is always available because if you want to cut something apart, you can do this at any time. And yes, very cool function. I like it, Susanna. And Vilma has a question. How much do you charge a customer for design like this? For something like this, I mean, this design here, it's going to be $40. And I mean, if you have a digitizer that digitizes and charges you $10 and they give you good quality designs, I mean, you know, I would keep using them because here in this country, I mean, I can't turn on my computer for that. Okay, so because for this design, when you go in, some designs are more difficult to do actually, and some designs are simple and easy. Some of them they're time consuming, and some of them are time consuming and difficult, and that just adds more time to to how long I have to go in and do this design actually. Villain has a question also. Yes, I did use the fractional tool for the S. Should have. Oh, you know what? Let me go back and let me select this. Well, you guys are sharp. I'll just select it here and let's take a look at it. This is before. Oh, you know what? Very good. This, you can tell that it's being used, but if I take it off, looks like that. And for these two, actually, well, I missed all of these actually. There we go. There. All right, so there, and everything else should be okay. I'll go back to design and remove small stitches again here. Whenever going to make a change with it, I'll go in and I'll turn it on again. And you know what? For the price, you know, here basically, you know, I have I don't do designs for everybody, and it's like for the digitizer, and what I see come across my desk a lot of is I see some of those guys are pretty good, okay, and but what you want, what type of design you want is when you find a digitizer, um, you don't want just, you know, I want this cheap, I want this cheaply done, because you get what you pay for, okay. You need to find a digitizer that does a good job, because usually if you got a good digitizer, they're going to save you time in your production. That's going to make you money in the long run. Okay. And so, because you can have a design that's going to run for 20 minutes, and an experienced digitizer will make that run for maybe 15 minutes. And so that's going to, you know, save you bundles of time and money in your production process. So most people look at the design as being too expensive. I don't think so, because I think that as long as I've been doing this, and for all the hours that it takes to go in and create these designs, I don't think so at all. Because some of the lettering, some lettering jobs, I've had to work for 2 hours just digitizing the lettering, because the system didn't have text that worked, or the text was different, and so it took me 2 hours to digitize that. And so, you know, everybody is different actually, and everybody lives, you know, and also where you live also. But that time, it's just, it takes so long to do those small lettering. And for me, they got to be perfect, not just, they can't just be, they can't just look normal. They got to be perfect. And so, yeah, so that's the way that works sometimes. And think about this too. Remember, guys, in 1986, if you wanted a design done, it was $18 per 1,000 stitches, and you have a general stitch count for probably what, 7,000 stitches. If you wanted that design in less than 3 days, you were paying $21 per 1,000 stitches. I made $1,000 in 15 minutes one day. Of course, that had not happened again, but so yeah, so everything, you know, for me, is like in the generality of it, basically, like the software. This software in 1986 would have been $60,000, just the software alone. So, and so that's where I come from, because I'm an old schooler. Susanna has a question. That's more of a support question, and you can just send me an email to support@willcomeamerica.com about that one. That one's definitely more of a support question. Let's see here. Mary has a question. When you change the angles on the Peru, it looks different now. Shiny than not shiny. Me here, Mary? Are you a perfectionist too, Mary? Yep, and you see what happens here? This one's at a slight angle. So I would go to control and go here and make this straight. And then I would also use that stitch angle here at the last stitch like that. And I would do it like that. Yeah, you're a perfectionist too. Shame on you, Mary. Shame, shame. I'll click save here. All right, very good. You guys don't miss anything, do you? Much better. All right. So now let's do our stitch player with this. Oops, did we move the green down? No, we didn't. So the green is going to go down, the green to the move to the end. Okay, now we're going to save this. And I'm also going to click on the auto start and end here. I'm going to save this again. And so, yes, Mary, it would have, yeah, it would have been shiny. So now let's run this. This will always be the element of truth. I can move the exit point to the end on these, and I want these to trim. Again, I'll move the exit point to the bottom of the R so that it stitches all the way through. I've got my spaces working. Ooh, well, that looks out of place, doesn't it? I have to change that underlay stitch. Somehow I missed it. And here, as we can see, yeah, see, this is why this feature is so important inside the software, guys, to kind of remind you if something's not correct, actually. So now for the, once this stitch is here, let's change this underlay stitch here also. It's always those little things. And so after the J stitches, I want the U to stitch, J line here, and then go here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 here. Now I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to click save here also. And now let's run this again. So this, again, this is why this feature inside the software is I think it's just priceless. Making sure everything does what it's supposed to do. speed this up. There we go. And this is what it's supposed to look like. Just like that. Okay. And the only other things that I will go in and make adjustments on is making sure that the exit points go all the way to the end of each one of these actually. So it stitches all the way through, and this, you don't have to do that, but this is just me being a perfectionist. And so as I continue with this, I'm pressing my tab key, making sure that the exit points are going toward 12 o'clock here. And for this one, after this stitch is here, this is how quickly I can change this. I want this to stitch next, and then this one. And I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3. So now when I go back and I press tab, starting point here, and I want the exit point here. As it continues, the starting point and the exit point. Again, this is just me, but I want those exit points not to stop in the center like that. And so after this one stitches here, I want this one to stitch in that one. And I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3, and that little point goes away. Here, I'm going to run this again because I'm going to run this while I'm still making edits on this. I'm going to run this until the end. And so with that, okay, so with that, guys, so this, you know, once I save this again now, so now this should be, everything should be correct with this. I've got this set up, and so this is the end here. What I do also, all the colors that I don't use, I'll click this little X here. I get rid of them. Okay. I can make this thicker. I can make that bolder. And Susanna has a question. You're able to tell the software how to stitch out the little R because it was not branched and broken apart. Correct. And again, that's going to be your sequence where you tell it, where you go in and select what you want to stitch, first, second, and third. And so by reprogramming the stitch sequence, I was able to pull it off. And that's how you will pull it off if you want to go in and change something like that. Now, here also, as I was going in and as I was, I'm going to click this here. Now, the space on this one, it went up a little bit. So now it's 4.1 inches wide. Okay. And that 4.1 inches wide can be, I can click this and move this in slightly. To make that 4 inches, or it may not even matter at this point here with it because it's just going over a little bit with that, but it was necessary because the spaces had to be added here. What I could have done also, I could have just grabbed all of this and just nudge it over here using the 9 o'clock key and space it over in that way also. There are ways you can go in and you can do that, but the spaces had to be added in order to get this to look professional and perfect on the stitch out on the garment. And so that's pretty much going to do it for this class. And if I have any more questions, I'll take them now. As always, if you have suggestions for classes, you can always shoot me an email to support@willcomeamerica.com. In the subject, put attention James. Love to hear from you. Thank you, Gail. Thank you so much, Vimla. Thank you, Stephanie and Frank. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you so much. Let's see. Let's see, I have a question. Mary says, will you do a TM again? TM? My pleasure, Genevieve. Oh, the trademark. So for the trademark, you know, when you have designs, and sometimes the designs are they're small, and you need to go in and do a trademark or a registration mark, okay, or a copyright symbol. The best way to do it is to go in and I usually go in, if you have artwork with that on there, you can measure it on the screen, or you can just go in. I usually right click here on the letter A, and you don't need to type anything in this box. You'll go to insert symbol. Okay. If it's a running stitch, I'll choose R for run, and I'll scroll down. I will use the run block. This is what this looks like here. And from this list, actually, you just scroll down. If it's a registration mark, if it's a TM, here's my TM. And once I click it, it puts it inside the selection box. And just click OK here. And just like you would creating text, go on the screen and left click. Like that. You can increase the size of this, decrease the size of it. And sometimes too, when like if it gets this small like this, and what I don't like to see is this. Okay, and so under my connectors, under my tie off stitch, I like to choose this method 2 for a running stitch, because this one is like a little X, and you can see that on the garment most times. But I choose the method 2, and I'm going to save this method here because this is what I use all the time. And I must have gone in and changed something and didn't change it back. Okay, this method 2, this is what I always use. It just use a running stitch, just like a running stitch on a tatami stitch. Works perfectly fine. And I use it for everything, really. My pleasure, Susanna. And Susanna's a question, how would you do the 4H logo trademark? See, I think that if that's a design that you sent to me, send it to me again via email, Susanna, and I'll take a look at it. 4H logo trademark. If it's really tiny and it's very thin, more than likely I would choose a running stitch for it, because it's better, you know, based on the size. If this were going on a jacket back, of course I would use a satin stitch for this because it would be large enough. But for a left chest design, you know, more than likely, because in steel too, you have the, once I select that here, if I go to my metric setting here, and this is right now, this is 2.26. Remember, for this, if I do 4.0, it'll have to be at least 3. And this is because it's a regular running stitch. Okay, so you want it big enough that you can see it like this. Okay, size dictates everything. My pleasure, Mary. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time and your patience with me today. De nada. And guys, you can always contact us at support@willcomeamerica.com, support@willcomeamerica.com, and for information on updates and things like that. Knowledge base, if you have knowledge-based questions, computer specs and things like that are on our website. And also the class schedule as well. Thank you, Frank. Yep, see you tomorrow. You guys, again, thank you again. You guys have a great evening. Be safe out there, and I will see you tomorrow for creating, I think, multiple appliques. Right? You guys, you have a good one, and I will see you tomorrow. And as always, happy digitizing.